The Grim Tale of Grace Macabre, Chapter 39. The kiss lasted for a sweet eternity, but was over much too quickly. When Ari pulled away, Grace had difficulty reconciling that strange fact of time warping. How could an act of pleasure seem to last infinite lifetimes, yet also seem to have been the merest fraction of a second when it was over? An inspired thought flashed through her mind. It was a moment outside of time. She didn't understand what that meant and did not care. Her lips sizzled with the taste of Ari's kiss. She would be forever content in his arms and moved toward him. For the first time since meeting him, for the first time in her life, she was the initiator of intimacy. He did not resist. He moved into her embrace and let his hands slide down her back. They came to rest on her hips, and he pulled her tight. The music boomed. The lights flashed. The costumed patrons writhed with hands held high in praise of their abandon. Grace heard none of this, saw none of this. She had given herself to her own moment of abandon. "You guys are going to have to get a room if you keep that up," Salome purred. Ari broke the kiss and gave Salome a sheepish grin. "Leave us alone, will you?" "I'm merely observing that your relationship is heating up," Salome said. "Maybe you two need some privacy." Grace was filled with a maelstrom of emotions. Her upbringing had instilled the concept of personal responsibility and chastity. Her biology, the primal ache that consumed her, demanded to be fed. "I want more from him," she thought, "but there is a line I'm not prepared to cross. Or am I?" She simply doubted her ability to control herself with Ari. Ari led Grace back to the overstuffed couch. They sat, and he draped his arm across her shoulders. "We'd miss the show if we got a room," he replied. "Besides, we have the rest of the night, don't we?" Grace snuggled in close to him and looked out onto the freak show on the floor. She was fascinated when she noticed how many of the revelers moved from partner to partner as they danced. It wasn't that they were simply dancing with multiple partners. It was how they were dancing with them. One girl would grind with one guy before moving on to another who would do more fondling than dancing. She saw same-sex couples as well as hetero couples partake in this partner swapping. She was even more surprised to see some of those couples move from the dance floor to various booths and tables where they began to make out. She was okay with public displays of affection between lovers, but what she witnessed now had nothing to do with romantic love. This was about lust. She caught herself being both repulsed and tantalized by this behavior. She struggled with how to define her reaction. "What's the matter?" Amy asked when she saw the look on Grace's face. Grace saw a gay couple that was dressed in drag, one as Cinderella, the other as a witch, who were passionately making out. One booth away, there was a girl dressed in a too revealing nurse's uniform, sitting on the lap of a guy dressed as Pennywise the Clown. There was no attempt to hide their passion. Grace turned her attention to Amy, who was lounging in a chair, a glass of wine dangling from her elegant fingers. Her red hair gave a surreal glow in the neon light. "Nothing," Grace replied. "This is all new to me, and I'm just taking it all in." Amy allowed her eyes to linger on Grace for a moment, as if reading her thoughts. "It seems that you're unsure about people showing so much affection down there." Grace was becoming more comfortable with Amy's directness. She knew that to continue to earn Amy's respect, she too must be direct. "I've never seen such openness," she replied. Amy glanced at the couples Grace had been watching. "How do you feel about it?" Grace decided to be honest. "I'm not sure." "Well, let me challenge you to consider something about those couples down there," Amy said. "Okay." "How do you feel about forbidden love?" Amy said. "What do you mean?" Grace replied. Amy uncrossed her long, slender legs and leaned forward, placing her elbows on her knees. Her stare was direct. "How do you think your mother would feel about the fact that you're dating Ari?" Grace didn't have to consider this at all. Well, she wouldn't approve. "Is that because Ari is a bad person?" Amy asked. Grace shook her head. "No, because she doesn't know Ari and would make certain assumptions based on how he dresses and how he handles himself. Yet, you are doing the exact same thing with those couples down there on the dance floor, aren't you?" Amy said. "How so?" Grace asked, confused. "Look at it this way," Amy said. "You're making judgments about them because they are openly showing their love for one another in such a way that you don't think is socially acceptable, are you not?" Grace had to concede the point. "Yeah, that's true, but that seems less about love and more about lust, Amy. How can that lead to any kind of a healthy relationship?" "Life is short, Grace," Amy replied. "And we miss so many opportunities to find happiness and peace or love because society defines what is forbidden and what is acceptable." "Maybe so," Grace said, then trailed off when she couldn't find a firm reply to Amy's logic. "We don't know them, Grace," Amy continued. "We don't understand their loneliness. If they find comfort in long-term love or from what they are sharing now, who are we that we should judge them?" "And isn't this similar to your situation with Ari?" Salome said, inserting herself back into the conversation. "What you have with Ari might not lead to anything, but shouldn't you be allowed to live in the moment and see where it takes you?" Grace nodded. "Yes," she said. The idea that what she had with Ari might not last made her heart ache. "You both make sense." "You may have found your soulmate," Salome continued, "and they might find theirs here tonight. If not, at least they were able to share something that helped them experience life to the fullest." Grace snuggled closer to Ari, and he kissed the top of her head. Amy and Salome shared a look. Then Amy said, "We don't judge here." Grace looked back down at the nurse and the clown. What they are doing feels so wrong, she thought. Yet it does seem hypocritical to deny them their love for each other. How is their forbidden love different from what I feel for Ari? She felt the heat of Ari's body against hers and had no doubt that they were meant to be together. She remembered Uncle Jim's obvious dislike of Ari when they had met in the parking lot. The thought of being denied a relationship with the man she had fallen in love with was heartbreaking. She slowly shook her head. "You've convinced me," she said. "I shouldn't judge others for trying to find love."